Visible Welding is pleased to present a series of video presentations covering the WeldWatch-EDU Weld tutoring system, which was developed with major funding by the U.S. Navy through the NSRP program. In this segment, we'll show some tips for making your demo videos the best they can be. Little touches that can make all the difference. Hi, I'm Steve Edelson from Visible Welding. I'm going to show you a few tips and tricks to getting the best shots for your demos using our camera and the WeldWatch-EDU system. So remember, when you're shooting a demo, it's not just about the weld. This is more Hollywood, so you want to make sure you get the best shot. And the weld may suffer in the shooting, but that's okay. So the first thing is when you're setting up, okay, we're sitting in room light. The camera is really designed for ultra bright arc. We're in a nicely lit studio here, so we're getting a nice image on screen. But in a typical dark booth, it wouldn't look so good. And while you're setting up and you're trying to explain things, so what I do is I get a simple, inexpensive desk lamp, and I think we bought this for about $25 online. And you put this just to shine down on the piece while you're setting up. And it does wonders. It does nothing when you're welding. It doesn't help, doesn't hinder the arc. It's almost invisible compared to the blinding light of the arc. But I tell you, this little light here, 60 watts, 100 watts, it's just amazing what a great job it does. Okay, so I recommend this unless you have great lighting in your shop. Okay. The second thing is, if you were doing welding with things that are smoky. Okay, we're going to talk about the camera angle and the angle you want for the shot, but there's another consideration. So if I were doing like a flux core MIG or something, there's two things that I would think of. So we're just going to get this in position. One is, it's going to be smoky, right? The smoke's going to be rising up. So all things being equal, a low camera angle, put the camera down and looking down at the arc this way, a lot of the smoke will be missing. It'll look a lot better. So a low camera angle for smoke. And then a top secret trick. Again, this is Hollywood. So a little fan can do wonders. So a fan placed here, and this is literally a $6 plastic fan that plugs into the USB that I bought on the internet. And it'll blow a gentle breeze over here and blow the smoke away from the camera. And you don't want a hurricane, but just a gentle breeze. In fact, you can put this farther away. It doesn't have to be right there. But this guy behind the camera will make your shot be so much better. I highly recommend it for a smoky process. Okay, so let's look at some of the other things that you may do for your trick. So we talked about camera angle, and this camera can go lots of different ways. And you have to think about what it is you're trying to teach and what camera angle might show it best. So if you wanted to show, for instance, the arc length, well, if you're shooting down, you can't see the length of the arc. That's another spot where you might want a low angle so you can see the length of the wire, the angle of the wire, and even the horizontal travel, right? If we were to move the camera over here for a length I'll just move the piece a little bit here. So if we were welding this way toward the camera, you're going to get a very different. First, you won't be able to see the angle of the wire, but you'll get a great view of the puddle as it's being pushed ahead. So this camera angle on the leading edge is great for the puddle, if that's what you're trying to teach. If you're trying to show how you keep the shielding gas, you may want a trailing one. You may want to put it behind, well, I won't do this, well, sure I can do it. We have this great arm that can move all around. So you might want to get around behind the weld and show how it trails. And you'll have to experiment a little bit and see what you like. If you're trying to show some other things, for instance, if you wanted to show, we have a great shot of the cathodic cleaning of aluminum and how the torch ahead of it pushes the oxide off. A nice overhead shot can show that just great. If you were to have a low shot of that, you wouldn't be able to see really anything. So be aware of the camera angle. And again, remember that for the demo, Maybe more than one camera angle is what you need. Maybe you need to shoot it 2 or 3 times to show the student, here's what it looks like from the front. Here's, watch the puddle. Can you see how I'm managing it? Now let's look at the side view. Look at the angle. Look at the travel speed. So you as an instructor have to think about what you are going to try and show the student, and then set the camera up appropriately. Now we have this behind, and a lot of first instincts is to put it on the same view as the welder. That makes a lot of sense. But what happens then is it's in the way of the hands, it's in the way of the welder seeing, and so if I were to put it here, which is my view, well, now I can't see the weld. So often you end up with a mirror image. You'd put it on the back side. And if you did that, that's no problem, because on the software, I'm going to go to the picture settings, you can flip it. If it were left to right, you want to make it right to left, 180-degree flip. In fact, I'm going to put a piece of paper up here, so you'll be able to see better that it flips. I'm going to focus on that. All right, so now let's go back to the picture settings and flip and all that. So we can rotate, we can go 180, we can flip it vertically, we can mirror it horizontally. So no matter how you set the camera up, you can get the shot you want, even though the camera was perhaps in an odd position to get, you want to get the best shot of the weld, and then second, you want to present it in the way you want to present it. One of the things that people always do when they first start is, if you had a coupon, the instinct is you have an 8-inch coupon and you're going to set the camera up to see the whole coupon. So I'm going to zoom out. Put this guy. There's our coupon. Okay, so you'd zoom out and you'd say, there we got an 8-inch coupon and we have an 8-inch weld coming up. And what you'd be disappointed in that. What you're going to find is that the arc is very tiny, the puddle is very tiny, and you're really not getting the kind of detail that you want to show to demonstrate whatever the teaching that you're trying to do. So I zoom in really, really close. And we'll get this. And in fact, if you zoom in near the maximum, we're about a foot away with the camera now. And what you end up with is about 2 inches of video space. So this distance right here, let's zoom out just a tad. Focus. So this distance that we're looking at here is about 2 inches, if you can see my fingers down on the plate. And so often what you have is the student will weld across, and then they'll enter the picture, and they'll keep going, and they'll come out of the picture. That's okay. The detail that you'll see in that short segment will be really what they can relate to and how you can instruct them. The only reason I would zoom out, sometimes I zoom out if you want to show positioning of the torch, posture, travel speed, some of the macro things. But when you're really looking inside, is the torch hot enough? Is the puddle advancing right? Are you getting adhesion? For those, you have to have a close-up. You just absolutely have to have a close-up. In fact, so this camera, when it's set up with the zoom in, as I said, gives you about a 2-inch window. We also have included with it is a small macro lens, and it screws right in the front of the camera here. These are threaded. And when you put the macro lens on there, you can actually get the camera within inches, literally 3 or 4 inches, and you can get some great close-up shots. And we've done this. Now, I have to warn you that, of course, you don't want to get spatter all over the camera. So if you have a messy process, you have a flux core MIG, you have a lot of spatter coming off, please don't put it 2 inches away. But if you have a TIG or you have a well-mounted thing, you can get very close with the macro lens and see exactly what's going on under the arc in incredible detail. There's 2 options for auto recording, and we set these up all the time. So if I go to the video recording and I go to its setting panel, we find it has manual, auto start by amps, and auto start when it's visible. And the difference between the auto start by amps and visible, amps is triggered by the amps of the welder. Whenever it gets over a threshold, I think it's about 40 amps, recording will start, and when it drops below, it'll stop. And remember, if you had this 8-inch coupon with only 2 inches visible, you're going to have a lot of recording done of things that are off screen. So if you want to save some space on the disk, you can auto start when it's visible. In that case, the computer is watching the screen, and even though amps are flowing, it won't start recording until it enters into the frame. Okay. We typically run it on auto start by amps. That's the default. It's the most reliable thing. But for some shots, you may want to do it when it's visible. So we point that out. So that's really the essence. You're trying to get a good shot. It's a little bit of Hollywood. If you have to add extra lights, if you have to have a fan blowing on it, don't worry about it. That's okay. Get the right angle, get a good close-up, and if you need to show more than one point about the weld, which you often do, just shoot a demo from each angle, and then you can show them in sequence. Here it is from above, here it is from the front, here it is from the back. Students are used to seeing multiple shots in every movie and television show they watch. It won't be a problem, and your point will be made so much better. Another thing that you can be aware of when you're making the demo video is some sense of the screen resolution that you can choose versus the sort of the shape of what you're trying to show. And the reason you might want to trim down the screen resolution is it saves a lot of disk space, and it also focuses the attention of the watcher on what you're trying to show. So I have this set up here with the metal, and our seam is going toward the camera. And if you have it that way, this 640/480 resolution is wider than it is tall, and you're really shooting something that's taller than it is wide. So what I would do in this case is either move the camera over here, so I'm looking this way, but if what you're really trying to show is maybe the bead out in front of the puddle in front of the thing, this is the angle you want. So I would go my camera, settings, and pick a vertical resolution. So here's 640/480, it's mostly X. If I go to 480/640, that's the same resolution, and now it's better aligned with that. In fact, I can even trim it down. So I might do it this way if I wanted to show something in particular and didn't want people to be distracted by something off. So now we have a much longer travel in the direction we want, and we have not as much disk space taken up, especially if we're going to save this off for a permanent demo. Likewise, if the piece were horizontal and we wanted to shoot it this way, there's our 640/480, 640/480, please, thank you. And then, but you can actually trim it down to 640/360 if you want to get rid of some extra waste. And if you want a really long one, we have a 1024/360, and this is very long. And this actually gives you a nice compromise. Here you can zoom in and still get a long travel. Even though you're zoomed in, you get twice the width. Okay, I'll make one last point here. Is remember the camera is focused at a certain distance, and so if you have the piece horizontal like this, the focus to here, to here, to here, to here, to here are all the same. Okay, the same distance, basic distance from the camera. If I turn the piece this way, and I'm moving toward the camera, okay, that may be the shot you need to show the point you want to show. But just be aware that the focus here is different than the focus here is different than the focus here. And you may actually have to set your camera up as a compromise to focus maybe somewhere in the middle. And you may see at the ends, it might get a little bit fuzzy as you get toward the ends, and that's your choice. If you're doing that, I'm going to open this up a little bit so we can see what we're doing. If you're running here, okay, I don't know if you can tell, but this is out of focus here. This is in perfect focus here. This is a little bit fuzzy here. So the sweet spot of focus for this lens is about this depth. It's called depth of field. If you were to close the iris down, this is a technique of professional photographers. As the iris gets smaller, the hole gets smaller, the focus gets wider. Okay? So if I were to go into my camera settings here and close the iris a bit, oops, too much. See now we're out of light. Now we're in focus over the whole range. Okay, it's got a little bit darker, and this is only important for setup. I'll tell you why. Because when you're an auto iris, when the arc is struck, the computer will close the iris down when the arc is there. And you'll see the focus gets better when the arc is on. It always gets better because you have a very small iris. But for setup, depending on what you're trying to show, you may want to close that iris a little bit to get that depth of field. Thank you very much. I'm Steve Edelson, and this is the WeldWatch-EDU. As we say, watch the weld, perfect the weld. Thanks a lot.